Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel, and today I'm going to show you how to do an edit of a model. There's not an awful lot of editing needing done, but there is little bits of imperfection on the skin that we're going to go through and see if we can fix up, and maybe some of the flyaway hairs here as well we need to fix up. In fact, with quite a few flyaway hairs, so that's our main sort of task. Get rid of all these flyaway hairs, maybe just do a little bit work on the skin, um, and maybe just whiten the teeth so they're an even colour. Teeth are lovely, beautiful smile this girl's got, but we'll just make the colour all a bit more even, and that's the way we're going to go at. So I've got an action set up, and if you're going to do a lot of editing, especially portraits and touch-up work, I suggest you make an action. It's a lot quicker. My action, I'll run it just now, and this is how long it takes. Close that, and that's it done. If you don't have an action set up, I'll show you how long it takes. We'll get rid of that layer. You need to duplicate the layer twice. Now this method's frequency separation. There's lots of YouTube videos on it. I'm not going to make all the claims about it. It's sort of industry standard now for model touch-up to use this method, and it basically separates the detail, which is the top part of the skin, from the overall colour of the skin. So one layer becomes colour only. So if you're going to do anything at all with the colour, if maybe she's got a birthmark you want to get rid of, or something like that, you would do it on the colour layer. And if there's anything, like for instance this little blemish here, if you want to get rid of that, you get rid of it on the blemish layer, or the sharp layer, sorry. And you can actually do it on a separate layer as well if you want, but I just do it straight on the layer. So the first thing you're going to do, hide that layer, hide the top layer. People will name their layers. I don't for this, but some will say blur and detail. That's what you want to do. Feel free. So on your blur layer, you want to go to filter and blur and Gaussian blur. Now I do a lot of these retouching, so I use that a lot. So I've made a keyboard shortcut, and it only takes a second or so to run it. So if I just go Control and Hash key, which is my keyboard shortcut, it takes me straight into the Gaussian blur dialog box. Now how much blur you need will depend on your model's skin. Don't overdo it. Somewhere between 3 and 5 is good. I'm going to 5 today because of this video, and I want to make sure that you're seeing what I'm doing. So we'll make it 5 pixels, click OK, then make the top layer visible again, and you want to go to Image, Apply Image, and you'll be presented with this dialog box. Now the image, you're on layer 1 copy, you want to apply layer 1, and you can just see the detail, and that detail you're seeing underneath is the sharp detail. It's a detail we're going to be able to work on this layer. And you want to make sure the blending mode is at subtract. When you first go into this, it'll be at multiply. Make sure it's at subtract, and these numbers here need to be the same. 100%, scale of 2, and offset of 128. They're not my settings. I have no idea who came up with them, but it's a great it's an asset when you're doing your portrait retouching. So obviously we can't work on that layer as is. Well, actually we could. You can work in it like this, but it's better if you change the blend mode to linear light over here, and you'll see that there's very little difference now. Oops. There's very little difference now to what we started with. So if I hold Alt key and press this bottom eyeball on the bottom layer, the background layer, you'll see there's no change. There's actually a very slight change, but it's so insignificant you wouldn't notice it. Now the first thing we're going to do is work on the blur layer, this one here, and if you get the lasso tool, what you want to do is make a selection of all the skin, but I leave out things like eye, the area between the eye and the eyebrow. You don't really need to do it up there, but you can if you want. If your model's got makeup, you know it can destroy the makeup. So it's entirely up to yourself if you do it there or not. Um, so forehead definitely. I'm sorry if my TV is so loud in the background. I forgot that it was on actually when I started doing this. So, and I've purposely made a little error here just to show you. Um, so when you've made an error, if you select an area you think I don't actually want to work on the hair, you've got options. Um, Hopefully you can see this. If I hold the shift key, and I'm using Windows, but if I'm holding shift key, you'll see the little plus appear. That would let me add to a selection. And if I'm holding the alt key, you see the little minus, that will let me take away from a selection. And in this case we don't want to select the hair, so we'll just take away for that. Now these little bits of hair that I've selected here, don't worry about them because we're going to be getting rid of most of them anyway. And we'll just add, we'll add on to this little bit here. So I'm just going to make a selection now and I'll not say very much more until we get it all done. Okay, now that's us made quite a big selection. I've not went too much into the eyebrows. Did a little bit here because it's the way she's got her head turned. It's a bit more prominent here, and you don't want to have perfectly worked on skin there and not too much worked on skin there. Now the other thing that I've forgot to mention, I've made a when I selected the lasso tool, I've got a feather of 28 pixels. 25, 20, anything you want really. And what that means is that I'll not be working right up to any edge. So even if I did go over to her hair, it's not going to really affect the hair that much. It's going to be a feathered. But this is a, if I go to image size, this is a 5760 pixel image on the long side, which means that 28 pixel feather is very little. So you know, keep it fairly tight, but do have a feather in it, and it just means you've not got a really hard edge from where your effect stops. So we've done that. Now back into Gaussian blur, and this is where the shortcut comes in handy because you use it quite a lot. And I'm going to start somewhere about 20 pixels, and it's good to get fairly close into the skin. Now her skin is very nice to start with, so I wouldn't go too much on this particular one. And 15 is good. And what I'm looking for is pretty much anywhere. You see, we've still left all these hairs are still there, even though I'm applying this blur over the top of them. Let's do 2 pixels to show you the difference. There's 2 pixels, and you can still see blemishes under the skin. So let's go to 10 pixels. And leaving it at 10 pixels would mean I'm going to have to do a lot more repair on the colour to get an even colour. So let's go up a bit more, 15. And I'm still seeing a little bit blotchiness, so I think 20 has probably been a good starting point, and it's where I'm going to leave that. So click OK, and then click Control and D to deselect the area that you've done. Now if we go excuse me, if we go, sometimes when I've got the screen recorder going and Photoshop, it can do funny things. So we're going to go in now and work on any of these little blemishes, and these are just little spots of makeup, etc. And I've never done anything to the neck, so possibly let's do a little selection of the neck. I don't ever include the neck in the same selection as the face, but she's got fairly prominent creases, and keep the blur the same. If I'm blurring the face by 20 pixels, um, I'll blur the neck by the same. So yeah, let's maybe take the neck down actually. Let's take the neck down to 10, and they're still there. 15, 15 better on the neck, so let's go with that. And let's deselect. And if we go back out straight away, you know what? That's not too bad on its own. Um, but you'll see there's a little bit blur in the hair. It's actually not blur in the hair. What you're seeing is the sharpness that's been put in on this there. We're going to sharpen it up later on, so we can ignore that just now. So we're back onto this the detail layer, if you like. And my tool of choice for this is spot healing tool. And you make sure this here is unchecked, sample all layers. You only want to work on this one layer, and we're going to try and get some of these flyaway hairs. Now if something looks like it's permanent, like a mole or something like that, I tend to leave it, but for this tutorial I think I'll take it off. And same down here on the neck, I'm seeing a couple of little creases, so I'm just going to gently go over them. Anything that's catching your eye, just consider removing it. What you don't want is a face entirely blurred. Let's see if we can get this hair away. And sometimes you'll have to go over it twice, that's fine. And the other thing with spot healing tool is don't keep everything going in the same direction all the time. It becomes that it leaves marks, or there's obvious smoothing parts. So we're going to do some of them, but I'm not really too worried about these. I'm just going to go around their face looking for anything like this possible. Is it a blackhead? I don't know what is a blackhead. Let's just get rid of it. Some of this may just be makeup marks. And it's always nice to take out any stray facial hair. Like down here, leave that. You're not going to get rid of it properly. A little blemish on the lip. So I'm just going to stop talking now, and I'm going to clean this area up. Okay, that's most of these little blemishes away. And it's important to keep going back to where you started with it. With your editing, actually, just seen another couple there that I've missed. So there's just tiny wee blemishes. I say she has got lovely skin, so we're not really going to make much in terms of improvement. And I'm going to change the blend mode now here. And once you've done a few of these, you'll know when to do it. You can either do it with the brush, or I'm going to do it with the same tool, spot healing tool, and we're just going to change it to a lighter mode, and we're just going to go over some of these little areas here, and this will not take them away. It will not remove them from the skin. They're still there, but they're just a lot lighter, and so therefore they're not quite as prominent. Okay, turn that back to normal now. Right, so that's us done. Um, back to normal. Um, so again, if we go back to the original background image, and if we hold the Alt key down and hit click on this little eyeball here, it will turn the other two layers off. So there where we are now, and that's where we started. And you see we've just lightened up into these little darkened bits, and she's looking great. So the next thing I would do, and I'm pretty much finished with the skin now, so I'm going to group these two layers. Control and G will group them, and just for my own purposes, I name my groups because sometimes on an edit you can have lots and lots of groups of different things. So skin's finished. Next thing I'm going to tackle is the eyes. You could do this in whatever order you want, or may actually let's do the teeth. Seeing I've got it to here, so we're going to make a selection of the teeth. We'll make we'll just use the quick selection tool. We'll get it down a little bit. Tolerance to 26, and we're looking to add to the selection. So when I lift the mouse away, I can add on to the selection. So we've obviously got far too much there. That's just at the normal. So now if I hold the Alt key down, like the last selection tool, holding the Alt key down will let me remove from a selection, and I'm just going to go into and that's not giving me the selection I want. So what I'm going to do is just Control and D, deselect that, and I'm going to go for the brush tool now. I'll do this on a blank layer, otherwise it will not work. And with the brush tool selected, I'm going to hit Q, the letter Q, and that will bring up the quick mask tool. And you need black as your foreground colour, and you can just paint on. I've got an opacity of 10%, my flow, sorry, of 10%, so we're just going to turn that up so we can quickly select these, and I'm just going to paint over all the teeth in red. And don't worry if you make a little sort of infringement onto the kind of lip or any other part of it for that matter. We'll remove it before we start editing. So the quick selection tool, quick mask tool, what that does is it allows you to paint, and this red that you're painting on isn't paint as such. It's an indicator of the area you're selecting. That's all, nothing more. And when I'm finished doing this painting on, selecting areas I want, let's just go right up there a little bit. When I've selected all the areas I want, I'll hit letter Q again, and we'll be able to select the teeth rather than the gums and the lips. And we're going to be there in a wee second. Now when you've made a selection, it may be that you're selecting gum or teeth or anything else. So if your foreground colour is black, hit X on your keyboard to make white your foreground colour, and that's going to remove, it's going to do the opposite of adding to the selection. So we're just going to take these bits off now, because we don't want to colour our lips just yet. So you don't have to be too kind of specific with this. You definitely don't want to be straying up and into the gums area or the lips. I think that's not too bad. So we can now get rid of this layer here, but we'll get this layer up first. We'll hit Q again on the keyboard. You see that turns that into a selection now. And I'm going to make a hue and saturation adjustment layer. We'll pick that up. We'll get rid of that layer there. And now we can go into the properties dialog, and we can, the first thing I do, we're going to lighten them up a little bit, and we're going to go yellow. And this girl's not got yellow teeth, but in between the way the light's hitting her and stuff like that, it appears kind of darker than the rest of the teeth. So all we're doing is taking any yellow that's there out, just completely desaturate it. Not added any lightness on. Let's just add a lightness of about 5 or 10 or something, see what it looks like. And when we zoom back out, you can see that's made a lovely difference. At the keyboard, yep, and I'm quite happy with that. So that's the teeth done. And again, I'm going to group it. And the reason I group it is I don't want to affect the mask that I've made. And if I do want to drop the opacity, I can do it. I can add a mask on here. If I maybe just add a little bit more tone in the middle of the teeth or whatever. So, okay, next layer is eyes. And the eyes are fairly dark. And that's a natural, excuse me, that's a natural colour of our eyes. And the whites are also fairly dark. So we're going to try and brighten the coloured part up first, and then we'll work on the white bit. So curved layer, you can do it in various ways. I prefer this method. Just going to curved layer, and all we're going to do is take that up, and we're not worrying about the skin. We're just looking at the teeth at this situation. The eyes, sorry, the teeth. So you can see we've clearly lightened up. If you just concentrate on the light bits, you can see it's definitely lightened up a bit, and that's fine. Not changed the colour in any way, it's actually just added light into there. And sometimes when they're getting all these eyelashes added on and things like that, it can affect the light that's hitting the kind of colour part of the eye. So we've lined it up now, we're going to hide all that with a mask. And we'll have to get really close into these eyes to do the next part. Okay, that's as far, and so what I'm going to do is, with the brush tool selected, we've got a black mask, so we need white as a foreground colour, and we want a brush size of about, about 5 pixels, something like that, absolutely tiny, you can barely see it, and in a kind of Z pattern, or any pattern you want, but you don't want it to be the entire area. You want to leave a bit of space in between what you're doing, and just make some marks in there. Okay, so we've added some brightness in, so now we want to blur that. So Control and hash key on my keyboard, you'll be filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and we just want a blur of about 3 pixels, and click OK. And if we turn that off and on, you'll see it's made a bit difference, and it's at the moment it's only affecting the colour part of the eye. Now we want to try and improve a little bit the colour of the eye as well, so let's do another curved layer. And if we really go into one eye, you can see the colour that's naturally in that eye just now is this kind of grey blue, more grey than blue, or greeny blue, and this kind of lighter colour. So within curves, again, you want your mask to be white. We'll come back to that in a minute. Within the curves, we'll go to the green, because I think that's more green, and I'm just gonna we're gonna just whack that up, and I'm gonna put a little bit blue in it as well, and that's probably more like the natural colour. And we could do another layer maybe and add in some yellow, but for now, again, we're going to hide what we just did there. I'm going to invert that mask, and with white as our foreground colour, our brush, again with a 5 pixel brush, we're just going to paint some of this, and it doesn't have to be too much. And do the same on the other eye. Do them at the same time, it makes it a bit more, I think probably less green is needed, but the good thing about using it as an adjustment layer, I can go back and let's just brush this out of the way. I'm now going to paint onto I'm going to blur the, let's just paint black and get rid of that little bit there, let's seep over. So we're going to blur Does green now. Control and hash key on mine, and keep it the same amount of blur as previous. Click OK. And I'm probably too much green, so let's go back in into the green, and we'll take the green back down a bit. And that's probably a bit better. That's not too bad. And let's drop that down there. And likewise, it looks not too bad on that side. If it's too strong, which I usually do it too strong to start with, take it way back down to 0 and then just up it a little bit at a time till you see some effect. 60% looks good, so let's go with 60%. And that's the two colour parts of the eye. Now we're going to work on the white part, and to do that we get a white, we get an empty layer, white brush. If you've not got white shown, hit D on your keyboard and it's the default colours, and then hit X on your keyboard and that brings white to the top. And we're just going to paint into all these white parts of the eye. So we'll maybe get a little bit bigger brush. We've got fairly high flow on this, so it doesn't really matter over that. Basically anywhere where there's white or anywhere there should be white, we're just putting a little bit white over the top. Looks a bit naff at the moment, don't worry. We're then going to double tap here, and we're going to use this to bring, if you hold Alt on your keyboard, it will split this. If I was just to move this now, it will completely undo what I've done, and we want to keep some of it there. So as soon as we start to see the colour distorting, which is pretty much at the bottom actually, hold the Alt key down and you'll split this and it will feather up the effect that we've just did. And if you turn that layer to something like soft light or overlay, and you can see we've lightened them without it's only lightened, it's not painted over. You can still see all these little veins, these blood veins in the eye underneath. We could take these blood veins out. I'm quite happy that they're there, but let's just show you how we would do that. Again, on a blank clear, and then back to the spot healing brush, and this time we can sample all layers, and we're just going to paint over some of these. And there's actually so many of them and they're so fine, I don't know if we're actually going to get rid of these, because right next to everyone that I'm going to get rid of is another one. But we can certainly clean it up a little bit. I actually seen somebody, an article in the paper, somebody's got these parts of their eye now tattooed. Wow. If that was done while they were awake, they're a braver person than me, I'll tell you. If you do a part it doesn't look right, just undo it. To undo it is just Control and Z. And because there's so many dark spots in here, it may not actually benefit or look any better doing this. And I think actually will not bother, because I think I don't want to distort this reflection. There's a lovely reflection on it. So let's just go a little bit and see if it made any difference visually. Yeah, a little bit. Right, so that's fine. So that's me now finished with the eyes, almost. The last thing I'll do with the eyes after we've coloured them and blurred them is sharpen them. And there's lots of ways to do that. My preferred way is this: make a stamp visible layer. Now a stamp visible layer is Control, Alt, Shift and the letter E. Or there's other ways to get it. That's my preferred way of doing it. And once you've got a stamp visible layer, we're going to change the filter on that. We're going to run a sharpening filter over it, and for this one we're going to run high pass. We do that now, high pass. And you're only wanting 3 pixels, 2.5 pixels, somewhere in that region. Click OK. And again, we're going to change it to linear light. And you can see how sharp that has made everything. And we really want to make the eyes sharp, so we'll put a mask over there and hide everything we've done at the moment. There's other you could change it to hard light. It's not quite as sharp, but there is a level of sharpening there. So pick your own. Linear light's quite good. Any of these ones here will give you a kind of hard light on it. So I'll just stick with a linear light, really sharp. And then we're going to put a mask on here and hide it. So if you hold Alt key down on your Windows keyboard, click on the mask, it'll put the mask in and fill it with black for you. And we're going to paint white now, and we'll do it one eye at a time. Back to the brush tool, and we're just going to drop the flow down to about 10 or 15% because we're not wanting all that effect here. And places where we're going to sharpen up for definite is going to be the eyebrows. So let's just paint some of them in, because I want like nothing more than drawing attention to the eyes and the eyelashes, of course. And let's just do the eyeballs. And again, if you overdo it, don't worry, because we can turn the layer down a little. And I think that's probably just about overdoing it. So we'll drop the blend mode of the layer maybe down to about 80%. And we'll turn it off and on. And that's not bad, it's sharp. We've emphasised the white. That's the inside of the eye. And again, you can go too far with this. So group everything. These are all layers to do with the eye. Control and G. We'll mark these up as eyes. Remember, we're looking at this at ridiculously high percentages. If we go back to the original, we've got rid of some of the lines on our face. We've brightened up the eyes without changing the colour. It does look like we've changed the colour when you're very close up. You wouldn't be looking at it that close up. And the last thing we do is the hair. And we're going to make a selection of the hair on an empty layer. And for this one, the best tool in the box definitely is a pen tool. So hit P on your keyboard for the pen tool, or select it from here, and make sure it's this top one here. You've got the pen. Up here you want to make sure it's path and not shape, and all the other settings will default. So pen tool will allow you to make straight line or curved selections. That's why it's so good, and you can contour it very closely to somebody's face. So a straight line selection is just that to that to that. A curved selection, you'll do one and do your next line. And if you keep the pen, well, I've got a pen, sorry, but if you keep your mouse down and drag, if the top point that you're seeing here will be the highest point of any curve. So the further you pull down the way, the more severe you can make the curve or arc up the way. Takes a bit of practice and it can be quite frustrating, but it's definitely something worth learning to use for any kind of selections you're going to do. So we'll do it in two halves. Start down here. The hair goes pretty much all the way down. So one, and you really do want to make sure that you're curving the hair, because hair with sharp corners on it just doesn't look correct. So we're going to curve that into there. And now to move, if my neck curve was here, we'll get an odd shape about it. If I wanted to change the direction of this. Your next curve, you really want this last node here to be going or pointing in the direction where you make your next curve. So to make my next curve correct, if I hold the Alt key down, I can then move this, and I just want it to be roughly where I want to put the direction of my next curve. My next one's going to be up here, and I'm going to curve it. Holding the Alt key down, I'm going to put that one back to the line of the hair, and again, click and hold, click and hold. We don't want it to be so close in the head that it looks unnatural, that there's no flyaway whatsoever, but we just want to get rid of some of these. And I'm just going to close up this selection back to here, and if we right click on here where it says make selection, give it a feather pixel or 2 feather, it doesn't really matter, give it some feather, you don't want it to be too kind of sharp. And now that we've got the selection, we'll change our tool to the brush, and you want a nice big head on the brush, and 0% hardness. You want it to be a soft brush. So hold the Alt key down and click here, click near to where you're going to paint, because what we're going to do is paint these hairs away and start painting. It's as simple as that. And sample often, and sample, I'm going down the way, so I'm sampling from below where I'm going to paint, so that the light will definitely be changing from up here to down here. And if I just have one colour all the way down, it'll stick out like a sore thumb. So I want to keep sampling as I'm going down. Likewise, when I get to this side, you can see quite clearly over here it's darker. It's much darker down here than it is up there. So to make it look kind of natural, we want to try and make the paint blend a bit better going down. So sample here, paint there, and I usually paint in towards the head. Paint however way you want. And with a big soft brush, it should blend in fairly well without leaving too many hard edges. I will get hard edge at the bottom here, I know that. And down here. Okay, if you Control and H will hide. I've still got the selection made, but it's hidden. You see, if I paint down in this corner, I can't. But you'll see that there is a hard line down here. But pretty much the rest of it, it's blended in not too bad. We've still left a few strays there, so it does look natural. So Control and H will make that visible again, and Control and D will deselect it. And I'm just going to freehand over these little bits here. We're just painting it in. So we'll do the same at the other side. P for the pen, and I'll just quickly make a selection here.
Folk, what I forgot to add is the reason you're making the selection at this point is that anytime you have an area selected and start painting, you will only be able to paint inside of that selection. It will protect anything that's not selected.
Okay, so once you made your selection, again, 1 feather pixel, hit B on the keyboard, select the brush, and we'll again select your paint colour for very near where you're going to paint. And like I say, I paint into the head. Now I did go quite close with some of the selections down here. I've left a little bit over here. Again, with your image, you just have to see what looks the most natural for yours. I think that'll look more natural leaving a little bit there. And that's that. So Control and H, again, hide your selection. I could deselect now and then reselect if needed be, but Control and H will hide it. I'll paint this little bit up here freehand. Control and H shows the selection again, and D will deselect it. And I'm just going to take a little brush to this area here and just get rid of it. Just going to be something that distracts you. And folks, that's it. That's pretty much all I would do to this picture in now. Um, Possibly one other thing I would do would be her lips. Would we give her a little colour on her lips? You could do that. Let's give her a little bit of colour on her lips. A little bit of lipstick. Again, best tool for it will be the pen tool. P for pen, or select it from over here. And this blurring method that we used on the skin earlier on, it shows you can see every single pore is still there in her skin. It's a fantastic way of doing it. So now we're just going to start right in the corner, go down to here, and keep that quite tight in there. And you could make two separate selections. I prefer just to do one selection if I can, rather than having a top lip and a bottom lip. But you know what, just do whatever you feel most comfortable with, and even to the point where you may want to just paint. So, but we've got a selection here, quite happy with that. There's little bits I can move, possibly. Let's see if we can move this over just a wee touch. And that's the thing about these selections, I can move them and reshape them in a way that you can't with other selection tools. So you got your selection, right click, make selection, click OK, and I'm actually going to get rid of this layer here. We'll just bin that in the bin, don't need it. We're going to use our hue saturation adjustment layer again, and if I just change the hue now, you'll see how good or bad the selection is. And you'll see there's a little bit there that we've missed, a little bit in the top we've missed, but you know what, it doesn't really matter. So that's how you would put on some lipstick. If you stay near the original sort of red of the lips and just change the saturation and maybe the lightness, bring it down a little bit, you can then just go on and paint any of these little bits you've missed. Like B for brush, and for colour I'm just going to take a colour right from here, and we're just going to paint in any of these. And that's fine, you know, you don't want to make too precise a selection because it's just not going to look natural. Again, sampling the colour for very close to where I am, and that, you would get away with that, no problem. The only thing you've got to watch now, if you change the colour or opacity on either of these layers, then it's going to have an effect on that. But I'm just going to leave them there. We'll hop Control and G for group. That's the lips, and this one here. Again, just Control and G it. The reason I G it is if I decide to put a mask on, instead of putting a mask on one part of it, I would be able to put a mask on all the different. If we go to the skin, for instance, I could put a mask here in the group and show a little bit of or erase the effect on any part of that whole layer rather than the individual part within the layer. Wow, that took a while. Anyway, lips. This last group here is hair, and sometimes we can even go in and affect the hair as well. So let's do that. This very last one I'm doing, this is just a fun extra. Solid color adjustment layer, and let's this color doesn't matter right now, and we'll make it something really different to what she's got at the moment. and we'll now hide that, Control and I to hide it. And we're just going to paint in a mask, and it'll look really stupid to begin with. The colour is going to change, so don't worry about the colour. So black mask, white brush, make it fairly big, and you probably want a harder brush for this, not too soft, because you want to take the hardness up to let's see, oops, Control Z, and we're just going to paint in the yellow, and we don't want to go. We try not to go over the edges if we can. And right, all what I'm doing here is bringing through the layer that's underneath. So, and the colour underneath is at the moment ridiculously bright yellow, but as I say, don't worry, we're going to make a change on that. She's got a nice rich colour in her hair anyway, so this is possibly not going to show up ideal for her, but we'll show you the technique. You can use it on ones of your own. And if you really wanted to be precise with it, you could use the pen tool, make a accurate selection of the outside outline of the hair and fill it that way. And just make a selection and fill with white, and that would bring that through. But I'm just doing it this way for a few seconds, and so just make sure we've got everything selected. Now the colour I'm going to put in this is going to be quite near our original colour. That's why you don't have to be so, 100% accurate with this selection here. If you went straight over too much, hit X on the keyboard and just paint off. Okay, so that's us done that, and you know what? I think that suits her. No, it doesn't. So let's change the colour to something a bit more and keep in with what she has there. Okay, so that's one of the colours just now. Now we're going to change a couple of things. We're going to have this show only show this where the underlying layer is darker. So we'll quickly do that. We'll change the blend mode to something like soft light. Now you think, what have we done? What was all that about? We can now make a more, and at the moment I'm only really affecting the darker parts of the hair, but we can lighten it, we can darken it, go down further into the red. She's got a lovely red hue about her hair anyway. We could go to something like that, maybe overdoing it. I think maybe up nearer to the kind of browns, about there, it looks better, so let's go with that. Again, we can dial back at any point, and you can see we're pretty near our own colour to start with, but it's just giving her a little bit more of a kind of stronger colour about the hair. And it's a good way if you want to lighten hair, darken hair. So that's it finished, and one thing I would probably do with this would be crop it. Is to crop it into a rule of third for a bit on that eye, and we'll take the up to the top, maybe over there, down a little bit. So I would crop that maybe about that. Kick A. and you see we're left with this little edge here. And again, sticking with our grouping themes, I would maybe move this one down. So if you hold Shift on your keyboard and hit the square bracket key, or sorry, Alt on the keyboard, let's take that and drop it into the hair one. And for this bit here, I'm just going to touch up, use a paintbrush, doesn't really matter with this. PB for the brush, big brush we want on an empty layer, big soft brush, and take a sample from about the middle, and we'll just paint this away. And we could vignette that down if we wanted to. Actually, vignette might be quite nice. Just darken that up there. Not vignette, just a little bit darker in the surrounds. There you go. That's a full makeover. This is where we started. Hold the Alt key down, hit this eyeball. This is where we started. Flyaway hair, little creases under the eyes, one or two little blemishes, and this is where it ends up. And the fact that we've done these all in separate layers, if there's anything at all we think, you know what, it's not working, we can turn the layers off, or we can go back in, reduce the opacity of them. There's lots we can do because we're working on layers. So if you've got Photoshop, you've not been working on layers, hopefully this will give you an insight into why working on layers is good. There you go. Thank you for watching.